Iain from RTO here. Hope everybody's well on this Wednesday. So it's Wednesday, so that means it's marathon day. We haven't got a huge one today, but it's reasonably long. And a well anticipated one as well. Today we're looking at what I can consider the granddaddies of progressive rock, King Crimson. Formed in November of 1968 by Robert Fripp and Michael Giles, Greg Lake, Ian MacDonald and lyricist Peter Seinfeld. They've started off as a more doom-laden sound rich in of layers of mellotron, strings, flute and Greg Lake's distinctive voice. So that was part one. We had other people come in, which we'll talk about obviously later, and then they reformed in 1981 and they went in a different sort of direction. They added a new guitarist in Adrian Bellew. That music was sort of influenced by post-punk, gamelan, African, New York minimalism. So that lasted 3 years, and then they went on a hiatus. They came back and made another album which was pretty good. Then they went on another hiatus in 1997 to 2000, and they come back, as Fripp put it, as a sextet, which is more industrial orientated King Crimson. And then they went on another hiatus and they expanded to a second drummer, so they had a two drummer for 2008 for their 40th anniversary tour. And after that they went on another hiatus, which everyone thought Fripp had retired, but no, he came out again in 2013, but this time with a 3-drummer front line. And this version has been touring up to 2021. So they've had like 3 sort of phases or 4 phases in their career. They've made some interesting albums, of course. They've made 13. So because we've got lots to talk about, because it's hard to describe King Crimson in a few words. So we'll crack on, shall we? Okay then, coming in at number 13. Now, before I start, doesn't mean that because it's at 13 it's a bad album. They're all really reasonably good. There's a selection that are not as good as others, but on all these albums there are some really good tracks. So let's get back to it. So coming in at number 13 is the 9th album, Beat, released in 1982, and the lineup on this was Robert Fripp, Adrian Bellew, Tony Levin on the bass, and Bill Bruford, no less, on percussion and drums, etc. Okay, the first track on this album is called Neil, Jack and Me. This is a very interesting track. Got some great guitar textures from Robert Fripp, and with Tony Levin you're always going to get a solid bass line. Bill Bruford's drumming's okay, but Adrian Bellew's vocals, I never really got touched to them, his vocals, for some reason. I thought sometimes he was off key and totally not doing the same as everyone else, but this one isn't too bad. Second track, Heartbeat, solid track. Bill Bruford's drumming on here is superb as ever. Pretty good track. Then we get an instrumental called Satori and Tangier. Love this. Robert Fripp's guitar work on this is really, really good. got that driving bass line from Tony Levin as ever. And when you've got Bill Bruford on the drums, makes for a very good track. Favourite track on the album, in fact. Waiting Man. Well, this has got such a repetitive melody, it gets on your nerves. The lyrics are not very good. I'm not very keen on that one. I get halfway through it and I have to skip it because it irritates me, something chronic at times. Neurotica, musically it is superb, but I just don't like Bello's vocal, unfortunately. Two Hands, yeah, this is a little bit better. Adrian's vocals sound a little bit better on this, and it's a pretty good track. The Howler, great bass line from Tony Levin. Pity the rest of the tracks all over the place. It's like it's this modern jazz. It's been described as, depends how many. In this case, you've got 5 musicians all playing different tunes. It doesn't do anything for me. It never has. Then we get another instrumental, Requiem. Again, it's a little bit repetitiveness in this track. But the Tony Levin's bass is really good, and Bill Bruford is absolutely spot on the drums. But it just isn't glued together. So that was the last track. Okay, this album has got some good tracks on it, but there's some there that's even too weird for my tasting. It's not. Doesn't come under the prog. It's just weirdness. I just don't know. But some of them tracks I just can't listen to. But for the ones that are good, they are very good. So I'll give it an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 12 is the 8th album, released in 1981, 22nd of September. Discipline. Very, very good album in places. On here we've got the same lineup: Adrian Bello, Robert Fripp, Tony Levin and Bill Bruford. First track, Elephant Talk. This track takes progressive rock to the extreme. To the extreme that I can't get into it at all. This is the period that I really do struggle with King Crimson. It is very difficult. Frame by frame. This is a good track. Bill Bruford's drumming is spot on. Even Adrian's vocal sounds okay on this. Really good. Then we get Matai Kusai, Please Wait. Robert Fripp's guitar work is excellent on this. He gets so many different textures, different sounds out of a guitar. Best track on the album without a doubt. In Discipline, as I said, I sometimes struggle with this reincarnation of King Crimson. They do have their moments of brilliance, but not this one. It's just noise, irritable noise. And there may be people out there that like this, but it just is totally off kilter for me. Then we get Thea Hun Jinjeet. This is an amazing track though. Bill Bruford, I love Bill Bruford's drumming. It doesn't matter what he plays on, he is fantastic. And Fripp's guitar work again is brilliant. He is one of the best progressive guitarists this country has ever produced. He is terrific on this. Great classic prog that is. Then we get The Sheltering Sky. This is an instrumental. Another brilliant piece of work. I do like, from this period, their instrumentals. They are very, very good, and I do love this track. Same with them, the last track, Discipline, another great progressive rock instrumentally. It's got every element that you expect from progressive rock. Great little touches on guitar, some really offbeat drum beats, a bass line that just drives through the song by Tony Levin. It's just fantastic. Yeah, this album has its ups and downs. The best tracks on here are all the instrumentals, without a doubt. Truly amazing pieces of music. And for that reason, I'll give it an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, coming in at number 11, it's the third and final album of this reincarnation of King Crimson, 1984's Three of the Perfect Pair, 10th album. So you've got Adrian Bello, Robin. Why do I keep calling him Robin? Robert Fripp, Tony Levin, and Bill Bruford. First track is the title track, Three of a Perfect Pair. This is really good. Love the guitar work in here from Robert Fripp. Got it right. And Bill Bruford again. Even Adrian's vocals are pretty decent on this track. Really good track. Model Man, again, musically this track is fantastic, but the vocals, no, he sounds totally off key in this, and it just doesn't sound right. Sleepless. Now this track, Adrian's vocals are really good. You've got Bill Bruford on fire again. Him and Tony Levin. That one thing about this in Reincarnation, the interplay between Tony Levin and Bill Bruford is fantastic. Two old hats at the game, and you can tell their experience. They seem to play off each other brilliantly, and they do in this track. Man with an Open Heart, like this one. Bit different. It's not very progressive, but it's still a very pleasant tune. Then we get New Ages, That Which Is passes like clouds. An instrumental, again spot on. Love this track. Some of Robert Fripp's best guitar playing on this. Absolutely brilliant. Industry, another instrumental. This is a song of two halves. It's intermixed with some just noises, and I just sometimes can't get round it. Take them out, and you've got a fantastic track. But I'd say 3 minutes of this is just a load of old noise, and it's not music to me. I just found it all a bit strange, this era. Then we get Dig Me. I don't like it at all. No Warning. Again, it's just a load of noise to me. It's not music. I really can't get my head around it. If there's people out there that do like it, give me, in the comments, please give me some inspiration to go and listen to this and try and get into it. Next track, best track on the album, Larks, Tongues in Aspic Part 3, carrying on from an album that we'll be looking at much later in the catalogue, but it just go back to them that time, and it's fantastic. I love this. I love that album anyway, but when you get another part of this song, fantastic. Good way to end the album. Again, this is a mixed bag of goodies. There are some exceptional tracks on it, and also some very suspect tracks. But I'll rank this on the exceptional tracks, because the ones on there I do like listening to, and I do listen to them. So I'll give it an RTO ranking of 7.8. Okay, coming in at number 10 then. The 11th studio album, released in 1995, THRAK. Now this is the first full-length studio since Three of a Perfect Pair 11 years earlier, and it's the only album they released that featured sort of the four from that era plus a few others. So on, who became members of King Crimson from then on. So we've got Robert Fripp on the electric guitars, Adrian Bello on electric guitars, Tony Levin again on bass guitar, Trey Gunn, Chapman Stick, war guitar and backing vocals, Bill Bruford on drums and percussion, and Pat Mastelotto on drums and percussion. So this is the first time you get the double drums. I do like this album. It is really good, sort of back to form. First track is called Bboom. It's an instrumental. Great keyboards on this and bass line. It is absolutely fantastic. First time I heard this, I thought, ooh, this sounds more like it. Second track, Coda Marine 475. Pretty good track. Great guitar work for Mr. Fripp. And the drumming is unbelievable. The play between Bill and Pat is fantastic. Then we get a really, really good track. It's called Dinosaur. Although it reminds me of I Am the Walrus, but it's a fantastic track. I found a clip of them doing it in America on a very rare TV appearance, so that is in the playlist for this, because it's a rare TV slot, and it's a pretty good track anyway. Walking on Air, again solid track. Bass line from Tony is just awesome, and then you get these delicate guitar touches from Robert Fripp. Wonderful stuff. Then we get Bboom. This is basically Pat and Bill having a bit of a drum duo together. Sounds fantastic. I love that sort of drumming. I love any band that has two drummers, full stop, because I think it does enhance the sound. Brilliant track. Then we get the title track, THRAK, which is an instrumental. To me, this is just classic King Crimson. Great guitar work from start to finish, some great drumming, driving bass lines. This is prog rock in the 90s, and it's brilliant. Okay, next track, The Inner Garden Part 1. This is a very, very short piece of music. Robert Fripp is fantastic on it. It's just him on guitar, and Adrian sounds really, really good on this. Them two together, it sounded really, really good. Next track, People. This is classic Tony Levin. I mean, he's a fantastic bass player. Wherever I've seen him drumming, bassing. Again, what I'm part of this track as well is the drumming's good on it as well. Radio Part 1, instrumental track. It's basically a little 44-second, but it's Robert Fripp having a bit of fun with keyboards and sounds, and it actually is cohesive, so it does sound okay. Then we get One Time, my favourite track on this album. It is an atmospheric rock, proggy sound, Great drumming, great guitar work from Robert, and again Adrian has a really good vocal on this, probably his best vocals that he ever did with King Crimson on this album. Pretty cool. Then we get Radio 2, again Robert playing around with sounds and making it sound cohesive. Then we get In a Garden Part 2, just like the first part, it's guitar and Adrian and it sounds really. Then we come to a track I can't get round, Sex, Sleep, Eat, Drink, Dream. I can't get mad around that one, it's just weird. Then we get Varoom Varoom, which is an instrumental, great track again. Robert Fripp's on fire here, he's having a whale of a time. Then we get Vroom Vroom Coda. This time you've got Bill Bruford and Pat Mastelot having an absolute belting time, solid stuff. It just carries on from the first Vroom Vroom. Brilliant. This is the best album from the King Crimson from the 90s. It sounds fantastic. A lot of instrumentals on here and they are just awesome. So I'll give it an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Time for a drink. Oh. That's better. Right, coming in at number 9 then is the 12th album, and this is the first release of the what Fripp called the double duo lineup. Don't know why. It came out in May 2000, The Construktion of Light. This features Robert Fripp on guitars and keyboards, Adrian Bello guitar and vocals, Trey Gunn Wartouch guitar and Ashbury bass, and Pat Mastelotto on the drums. So it's the first one without Bill Bruford. We get Prozac Blues as the first track. Musically fantastic, and then all of a sudden Adrian Bello goes back to weird and crazy vocals and it just doesn't sound right. Then we get the title track, Construktion of Light. A really interesting track, but I do like it because it's got so many different textures. Again, Robert Fripp's guitar textures. One minute it's quite heavy, next minute it's light and delicate, and that sounds really good. Then we get Into the Frying Pan. Awesome track. Prog for the 2000s and the 21st century. Fantastic. Favourite track on the album. Then we get Fractured. This is quite a long track. Great guitar work from Robert Fripp. He's just so brilliant on this, and it just proves that he is such a fantastic guitar player. Very underrated, I reckon. He's been around a long time, and he's just a solid guitar player. You can tell that because he does that little Sunday lunch thing with Toya, his wife, and sometimes when he just sits there and plays the guitar, it's lovely to listen to. Just him in his kitchen and his guitar. Next track, where we get to, The World Is My Oyster's Soup Kitchen Floor Wax Museum. What a mouthful. We'll say that again because it's fun. The World's My Oyster Soup Kitchen Floor Wax Museum. As it sounds, the title sounds weird, so it's the track. It goes back to those early days of King Crimson. We're going back to the 70s style stuff, and it is fantastic. Love that track. Then the next track, we get another part of Larks' Tongues in Aspic. Again, this is outstanding. It continues the track. One of these days I'm going to put a playlist and put all the parts together and play them one off, because they do sound brilliant. We'll talk about obviously the album a bit later, but this is just great progressive rock for the 21st century, and it just proves that this band are still the masters and still the granddaddies of prog rock, without a doubt. Yeah, then we go into I Have a Dream. This comes straight out of Aspic's Part 4 into this track. Great vocal, actually, but it's one of them songs that either John Wetton or Greg Lake could have sang on. It's that good. And even Adrian sounds pretty cool on this. It's a really good track. Then we get Heaven and Earth. This is fast moving, weird, a little bit irritating to us at the start, but it has a strong finish, a bit more relaxing, a bit more chilled, and what started off to be a bit of a noise turns into a really good track. Okay, this is a very good album. Goes back to the roots of King Crimson. Some great pieces of work that this reminds me of their early days, and for that reason I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8.3. Okay, coming in at number 8, this is the 13th, and it's actually the most recent album they have released studio wise. Released in 2003, The Power to Believe. This album again features Robert Fripp, Adrian Bello, Pat Mastelotto and Trey Gunn. First track is I Believe, and this is a cappella from Adrian, and when he sings like this he sounds really good. I sometimes wonder why he does the weirdness. Just sing properly like John and Greg did and you'd be fine. No need for the weirdness, mate. Good little track. It's only 44 seconds, but it's quite pleasant. Then we get an instrumental called Level 5. This is brilliant. I would say there are only 2 guitarists that are still doing great prog music. Obviously one is Robert Fripp and King Crimson, and the other is still Steve Hackett. They're still at the top of the game, both of them. But this track is actually dominated by Robert Fripp's guitar playing. Fantastic. Next track, Eyed Wide Open. This isn't too bad. It's got a very good melody. It's not too bad. Then we get Electric. Again, great song, instrumental, great drumming from Pat. He's one hell of a good drummer as well. It was big boots to fill Bill Bruford, and he's done a great job. He's got the textures, he's got the heaviness, the lightness. He is a fabulous drummer. Good track. Then we get a really nice track. It's 2 bits put together. It's called Facts of Life. First you get an intro. This is a nice little piece. It leads into the main track. And then you get this hard hitting rocky prog track with effects all over it. It's so eerie. Even Adrian's voice is eerie and atmospheric on this. It is really good. Then we get Power to Believe Part 2. Again, atmospheric, great bass line, more incredible guitar work from Robert Fripp. Superb stuff. Dangerous Curves, another instrumental. This is a track, like I call it, it's a little bit techno that meets prog, and it actually works. And it sounds great. It's got a nice beat to it, but it's still got the elements of the core of progressive rock. Absolutely belter. Next track, Happy With What You Have to Be Happy With. This is this is a really heavy track. It's more progressive metal than rock. It shows that they have got versatility. and it's the best track on the album. It's a stonking great track. Then we have another part of The Power to Believe. This has got atmosphere, great work, what can I say? Lovely prog sound for the modern day prog, 21st century prog. Then we end up with the last bit, I Believe, Power to Believe, part 4, Coda. As the album started, this is very pastiche, lovely effect on the vocal, nice touch on the keyboards, and a really good way to end this album. I like this reincarnation version of King Crimson. They're bringing prog rock bang up to date for the 21st century, but with the values of the 60s prog, which they started. So they still are the granddaddies of prog rock for me. So I will give this album an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay then, we are now moving into that first big era of King Crimson, and obviously these albums are the pinnacle of their career. All these 7 are great albums. I found it very hard to rank these because they have got so many great tracks. Very difficult job, but I managed to do it eventually. I don't dislike any of these albums at all. So here we go. Coming in at number 7 then. This is the 4th album, released in December 1971, Islands. This is the only lineup of the studio album that featured the touring band from 71 to 72. Oh dear, my voice is going. So this was the only album that this lineup was on. So it was the last album also to feature the lyrics of co-founding member Peter Sinfield. So let's have a look who's on this. Robert Fripp, of course, guitar and mellotron and harmonium. Peter Sinfield, lyrics, sound and visions. The ever-present Mel Collins, who seems to have drummed. Oh, I've got this. Has played saxophone on every prog album going. He also plays flute on here, and the bass flute, just a bit of backing vocals. Got Iain Wallace on drums, and Boz Burrell, bass and vocals. So this sort of nicely ties in with Bad Company, doesn't it? First track, Formentra Lady. I love this song, always have. Great vocals and Boz. I didn't realise he was such a good singer. And it's just, it's got, obviously you get a great bass line from him, and it's just pretty cool. And it's classic King Crimson to me. Then we get the Sailor's Tale, instrumental, amazing track this is. All them elements of a great prog track from that era. I mean, at the time you've got ELP and Yes, Renaissance was about, Camel. They all were doing the similar sort of stuff, and this is just truly amazing. Then we get the Letters. This is Mel Collins on the saxophone. He is, I would say, he's an get me tongues around this. Integral. Shall we start again? Mel Collins is a big part of progressive rock in this country. His saxophone is all over some great tracks. Ladies of the Road, again, Mel Collins dominates this on the sax. Great bit of music. It sounds like more than of a jam session than a track. Brilliant good. Prelude, Song of the Girls. I'm really struggling this morning. The string, this is a string piece and very, very pleasant. Then we get Islands. Now this is really weird. If you've never listened to Islands, I'm sure all of you have if you're a King Crimson fan. It's so relaxing. You get some nice piano, some nice Saxon mel. Then all of a sudden it goes quiet for about a minute. There's nothing. You think, what's going on here? And then when it comes back, it sounds like they're in a rehearsal session. Absolutely bonkers, but very enjoyable. This is a classic King Crimson album without doubt. It's very solid, very enjoyable, and I'll give it an RTO ranking of 8.8. Okay, coming in at number 6 then, the 5th studio album, released in 1973, Larks, Tongues in Aspects. This is a great album. It's the first of feature John Wetton, of course, and Bill Bruford. So we've got Robert Fripp on guitars, the one and only John Wetton on vocals and bass and piano, Bill Bruford on the drums, David Cross on violin, viola, mellotron and Coda, piano to flute, and Jamie Muir does percussion and all sorts of stuff. Okay, first track, Larks, Tongues in Aspic, Part 1. The main man, John Wetton. Great bass line. And Bill Bruford on the drums. This is absolutely brilliant and weird at the same time. Great track. Book of Saturday, very jazzy this is, of course. Great bass line from John, and his vocals are pretty cool on this as well. Exiles, brilliant track, favourite on the album. Great vocal from John Wetton, of course. You've got David Cross on the mellotron here. He also plays a little bit of the flute. Robert Fripp, as ever, constant, brilliant. Easy Money, one of the heavier tracks on the album. You get the first signs of this booming bass line from John Wetton's bass that became sort of signature of his playing throughout his career. Robert Fripp again on the money, in playing Easy Money. Then we get a track called The Talking Drum. I have to be in the mood to listen to this. Sometimes I like listening to it and sometimes I don't. It's a bit abstract, it's just weird. Then we get another long Larks, Tongues in Aspic, Part 2. The play between John Wetton and Bill Bruford on this is brilliant. This track just builds up and builds up, and it's just wonderful to listen to. These two were a great engine room, Wetton, Bruford. See, I think John Wetton's one of the best progressive bass players. Very underrated bass player was John. Again, another gem. Excellent tracks. Great introduction for John Wetton. Love this album, play it so much, and I'll give it an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, coming in number 5 then. 6th album, released in March of 74, Starless and Bible, Black. Again, this will feature Robert Fripp, John Wetton, Bill Bruford and David Cross. Stunning album again. Opens up with The Great Deceiver. No intro, bang! It is, it's literally 1, 2, 3, go. And you get blows you. If you put this on first thing in the morning, it certainly blows the cobwebs away. It's got a great bass line and some great work from Robert Fripp again. Tremendous track. Lament, killer vocal from John Wetton. When you listen to this, you sort of go, yeah, you know where he was going. And it was this track he co-wrote. You could see where it was going and what was going to come afterwards when you listen to it now. Brilliant track. Then we get an instrumental called We'll Let You Know. Bill Bruford is just on fire on this. With those little half beats that he puts in. Again, John Wetton. Absolutely brilliant. He plays around Bill's drumming. He's superb. Then we get The Night Watch, another solid track. Some of that bass line you would hear later in John Wetton's career, especially in Asia. There's some of that driving bass line that was connected with them early Asia albums. Fine track. Then we get this instrumental called Trio. This is so peaceful and relaxing. Some lovely flute on here. Doesn't say who plays it, but it's absolutely beautiful. Then we get a track called The Mincer. This is more of a jazz fusion in places, and then it sort of dives back into prog and then back out into jazz fusion. Very good, love it. Then we get my favourite track on here, the title track, Starless and Bible Black. Instrumental, 9 minutes and 11 of pure progressive rock. Great drum licks, eerie textures on the guitar. John Wetton's bass sort of just oozes through this like a knife going through butter. Holds it together. The track is brilliant. Then we get another one called instrumental called Fracture. Loved the start to this, but it fizzles out a little bit, and it's probably the weakest track on the whole album. This top 5 are so hard because all these albums are absolutely out the top drawer. Again, just a solid album, classic King Crimson. I'll give it an RTO ranking of 9.2. Okay then, coming in at number 4. Second album, released in May 1970, In the Wake of Poseidon. This is a mixed album because it's got, the way it's credited on the album is you've got, at the time there's I'll just read through it because it's hard to explain. And this is how it goes. It goes Robert Fripp, guitars, Mellotron, Celesta, Hohner, piano, devices, production. Peter Sinfield, lyrics and production. Then it comes up with former King Crimson personnel. Michael Giles on drums on some of the tracks. He plays on, I think, 4. Greg Lake sings on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks. Then under that you get future King Crimson personnel, where you've got Mel Collins again on saxophones, Gordon Haskell on vocals as well on one track. Then additional personnel, Peter Giles on the bass guitar, Kevin Tippett on piano. So it's a weird and wonderful lineup. I like how I put it, 4 members, don't know, but it's a great album. Peace and Peace, a Beginning. It's okay. It's 51 seconds of Greg Lake. Pictures of a City. Great vocal from Greg Lake on this. This is just another great classic track from King Crimson. The guitar solo blows your mind, and Greg Lake's bass playing, of course, and we all know how good he was. And you got Michael Giles on drums on this, and it's a very, very good track. Then we get Condense and Cascade. Again, great vocal from Greg Lake. You'd get more of this softer singing when he joined the LP, of course. Really good piano work on here by Keith Tippett. Then we get my favourite track, the title track, of course, In the Wake of Poseidon. I just love that mellotron at the beginning. One of my favourite instruments from the 70s. I just love that sound, that richness. Greg Lake again, killer vocals. Fantastic song. Then we get Piece of Theme instrumental. This is just Robert Fripp on a classical guitar. Excellent. Then we get the wonderful Cat Food. People don't like this, but I love it. Great track. And I think Greg Lake nicked some of the ideas for this, because there's little bits that you think, oh, sounds a bit like Take a Pebble, and oh, that comes from In the Beginning. But it's a great track, love it. Then we get a nice long piece called The Devil's Triangle, split up into 3 parts: Murday, Morn, Hand of Siron, and Garden of Worm. This is love the mellotron again on this. It starts the piece and it just builds and builds, and then it goes into what I call a jazz improv. Now, does it need it? No. They could have cut it off there and it would be a great track, but it just goes on as, again, it goes into 5 musicians all playing different things at the same time, and it sort of irritates me a little bit. Then we get Peace and End, another quiet piece between Robert Fripp and Greg Lake. Okay, this is not as good as the debut album, of course, but it has got some great stuff on it. The instrumental stuff is brilliant, and some of the vocal from Greg Lake is very superb. And I give it an RTO ranking of 9.5. Okay, now we're moving into the top 3. There's that much between all 3 of them. So coming in at number 3 is the 3rd album, released in 1970, Lizard. This is a transition lineup of a band, of course, and it was the only album that featured singer and bassist Gordon Haskell. Although he did pick, as he sang one song on the previous album, and it's Andy McCulloch's drumming as an unofficial member of the band. So on here we've got Robert Fripp as ever, Peter Sinfield on lyrics, and all sorts of weird and wonderful sounds. Mel Collins is back on the saxophone and flute. Gordon Haskell plays the bass and vocals, and Andy McCulloch is on the drums. First track is Circus, which is including the entry of the Chameleons. Great track. I love Gordon Haskell's vocal on this album. Very good singer, got some beautiful mellotron in here and some great sax, and the ever-present Mr. Collins. Okay, indoor games. This track is actually just dominated by Mel Collins. He's such a great musician. Flute, saxophone, clarinet, anything like that. He is just a very, very all-round musician. Happy Family. Ooh, I don't like this one. It's probably one of the only tracks I really don't like. It's just too weird for me. Then we get Lady of the Dancing Water. This is where we see Mel Collins on the flute. Fantastic performance. And you get some nice guitar work here from Robert Fripp. Wonderful little track this is. It's only 2.5 minutes, but it's fantastic. Then we get Lizard, which is split up into 3 or 4 parts. First part is called Prince Rupert Awakes. This sounds very Genesis. Gordon Haskell doesn't half sound like Peter Gabriel in times, but it's pretty sound. Then we get Bolero, the Peacock's Tale. This has got some trumpet in it. It sounds really good, a little bit different, but it's very solid. Then we get the Battle of Glass Tears. This is split into 3 again. We get Dawn Song and Last Skirmish, Prince Rupert's Lament. This tells a bit of a story of what's going on. Some great flute again from Mel Collins. Very, very good drumming from Andy McCullough. Fantastic stuff. And then we get Big Top, and it's sort of I don't know, I don't like the end of this song. Never have. I should have not bothered with that little bit. I think this is why this is at number 3. Because it just sort of spoils a brilliant album. But I still give it an RTO ranking of 9.6. Then we come to the top 2. This was even harder, because these two obviously are the cream de la cream of King Crimson. But in the end, I did it this way. Today, next week it might be the other way around, I don't know. So coming in at number 2, it's the debut album, of course, released in October '69 in the court of the King of the Crimson King. They say this is the first and most influential progressive rock genre, and it inspired bands like, well, it inspired ELP, I suppose, in one sense, and Yes, Genesis, Camel, you name it. This is why they are the granddaddies of prog rock. This is, to me, the first ever prog rock. It's got rock music and elements of jazz, classical and symphonic music. It's absolutely brilliant. So the lineup on here was Robert Fripp on guitars, Michael Giles on the drums, Greg Lake lead vocals and bass, Ian MacDonald on sax, flute, clarinet, bass clarinet, mellotron, harpsichord, piano, organ and vibraphone. Opens up with one of the most iconic tracks, not just in prog rock, but rock, 21st century schizoid man. I love this. The bass clarinet in this is fantastic. Greg's voice in this is brilliant. Love this track to death. Heard a few covers of it and they're always been good. Then we get I Talk to the Wind. Ian MacDonald clarinet on this is very, very good. Not just on his clarinet but the flute. Wonderful piece of music led by MacDonald's wind instruments. Then we get the brilliant Epitaph, classic track, Classic vocal from Greg Lay. Mellotron is just brilliant on this. Michael Giles is drumming solid, and of course some great guitar work from Mr. Fripp. Then we get Moonchild. I love the start of this, it's quite medieval in places. I get nice little bits of guitar work from Robert Fripp, and then it goes into something that you'd never really hear on. First time you probably heard this sort of thing on here, when they go into that fusion of sound and vibraphones and just weird for the time. No one had knew it, but it was what we know now as prog rock. Fantastic track. Last track on the album, of course, it's The Court of the Kings and Crim. Iconic definition of what prog rock is all about. It has always been one of my favourite tracks ever. I love the middle bit with the flute and the drums, and then it slows down and then it starts building up, and I love the end of this song. It is superb. As I said, this has always been claimed to be the very first progressive rock album. It was very different, groundbreaking. Love all these tracks. It's still a superb album today. You know, if people say what's prog rock, never heard it. You always say listen to this album, and that'll give you what prog rock's all about. And I'll give it an RTO ranking of 9.9. Okay, coming in at number 1 then. Released in 1974. 7th album. First as a 3-piece. One of the heaviest albums of all time, Q called it. And this was only achieved by 3 people. We're talking about Red, of course. Robert Fripp, John Wetton, and Bill Bruford. You got contributions from David Cross, Mel Collins and Ian MacDonald, but it's purely these 3 guys. I think this is the best lineup of King Crimson, when we had Wetton, Bruford and Fripp. First track, the instrumental, mind-blowing, Red. John Wetton's bass on this is just amazing. Drives this song. You've got Robert Fripp, great stuff as well, and Bruford's drumming, out of the top drawer. Then we get Fallen Angel, a brilliant track. Love the guitar work from Robert Fripp on this. Then we get Mel Collins and MacDonald. Really sound brilliant on this. One More Red Nightmare, more of that driving bass line from John Wetton. It reminds me of the beginning of Time and Again off the first Asia album. Absolutely driving and distorted bass line, and John's vocal on this is absolutely fantastic. And Ian MacDonald plays the sax on this. He plays the alto sax on this, and it sounds awesome. Providence, the interplay between Bruford and Fripp and Wetton on this is outstanding. I think this is just, I don't know if this was just a jam that ended up as a track. It's just brilliant. I can listen to it all day. And then we get probably one of John Wetton's finest songs he ever wrote. I mean, he wrote some great songs, but I think this is his best. Starless, of course. It's my third favourite song, I think, by King Crimson. Such a moving piece. It's got everything you want on it. Some rock, some gentle stuff. Mel Collins sounds fantastic on here. His contribution to this song really makes this song something special. So does Robert Fripp's guitar world, where it's just mind blowing, especially towards the end of the song. And an energetic Bill Bruford on this as well. Superb album. This is my favourite album because of the sheer heaviness of what three people could do at that time. It's just a very iconic album, and Starless is a fantastic song. I love it to bits. This to me is the most iconic album from King Crimson, and I have to give it an RTO ranking of 10 out of 10 today. It's for Starless Red on their own, that is purely worth 10 out of 10 for 2 tracks, but the whole album is fantastic. Listen to it quite a lot. Brilliant stuff. Okay, another longish prog rock ranking. Hope you enjoyed it. Please put your comments, as a lot of you prog rockers do. You always support when we talk about prog rock. That's all for today. Good job and all, really, because I'm feeling a bit bunged up. I think it's time for something to clear me throat. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow though. Sunshine, raining, we'll be still here. And what we got for you tomorrow? Ooh, we have got a then and now, and we're going to look at the Beatles tomorrow. Have a look at their career. And then tomorrow's album covers ranking is all about Pink Floyd's covers. Then we've got tomorrow's catch up as well. So we've got 3 really good shows tomorrow. Whatever you're doing on a Wednesday, enjoy yourselves, and I will see you all tomorrow. Take care for now.